Welcome to Camelia Tours Sri Lanka. Today we journey into the wild heart of Sri Lanka to meet one of the island's most remarkable and mysterious animals, the Sri Lankan leopard. Powerful, graceful and incredibly intelligent, the Sri Lankan leopard is the largest predator found in Sri Lanka and one of the country's most preserved wildlife species. Unlike many other leopards around the world, the Sri Lankan leopard is found only in Sri Lanka. This makes it a unique animal that cannot be seen in its natural habitat anywhere else on earth. From the dry forests of Yala to the vast wilderness of Vilpattu, this magnificent cat roams freely, playing a vital role in maintaining the balance of nature. Join us, we discover the life, habitat, habits and conservation of the amazing Sri Lankan leopard, the true king of Sri Lanka's wilderness. The Sri Lankan leopard, scientifically known as Panthera pardus cotia, is a subspecies of leopard native to Sri Lanka. It is believed to have evolved separately on the island for thousands of years, adapting perfectly to Sri Lanka's diverse landscapes and climate. With its golden coat covered in beautiful dark rosettes, the Sri Lankan leopard is one of the most striking animals in Asia. Adult males can weigh more than 70 kilograms, while females are generally smaller. Their powerful muscles, sharp claws, and excellent eyesight make them highly successful hunters. Unlike lions, leopards are solitary animals. They spend most of their lives alone, coming together only for mating and raising cubs. This secretive lifestyle makes spotting a leopard in the wild a truly unforgettable experience. One of the best places in the world to see the Sri Lankan leopard is Yala National Park, located in the southeastern region of Sri Lanka. Yala is famous for having one of the highest leopard densities in the world, attracting wildlife enthusiasts, photographers, and nature lovers from every corner of the globe. Another important habitat is Vilpattu National Park, Sri Lanka's largest national park, known for its beautiful natural lakes, dense forests, and rich biodiversity. Leopards can also be found in several other protected areas across the island, including Kumana National Park, Horton Plains, and the Knuckles Mountain Range. One of the most fascinating characteristics of the Sri Lankan leopard is its incredible adaptability. Unlike many other big cats, the leopard can survive in a wide range of environments, from dry forests and grassland to mountainous regions and tropical rainforests. The Sri Lankan leopard is an apex predator, meaning it sits at the very top of the food chain. Its diet includes spotted deer, sambu deer, wild boar, monkeys, porcupines, hares, and various smaller animals. Leopards are highly skilled hunters. They rely on patience, stealth, and surprise rather than speed. Often, a leopard will quietly stalk its prey for several minutes before launching a sudden and powerful attack. Their excellent night vision allows them to hunt effectively after sunset, when many other animals become active. Strong jaws and sharp teeth enable them to quickly secure their prey. Unlike lions, which hunt in groups, leopards defend entirely on their own abilities. Every successful hunt is a demonstration of intelligence, strength, and precision. Leopards are also remarkable climbers. They can easily climb trees to rest, observe their surroundings, or protect their food from other animals. A leopard resting on a tree branch is one of the most iconic sights in Sri Lanka's wildlife parks. Because they are naturally shy and elusive, many visitors consider a leopard sighting to be the highlight of their safari experience. Seeing one in the wild is a moment that many travelers remember for the rest of their lives. Despite their strength and hunting abilities, Sri Lankan leopards face many challenges in the modern world. Habitat loss, human-wildlife conflict, illegal hunting, and accidental trapping continue to threaten leopard population in some parts of the country. As forests become smaller and human settlements expand, leopards sometimes come into contact with villages and farmland, creating both people and wildlife. For this reason, conservation programs and wildlife protection efforts are extremely important. The Sri Lankan leopard is protected by law, and many dedicated wildlife officers, conservationists, researchers, and local communities work hard to ensure its survival for future generations. Leopards also play a vital role in maintaining the balance of nature. As tough of predators, they help control populations of deer, wild boar, and other animals. Without predators like the leopard, ecosystem can become unbalanced. Female leopards usually give birth to 2 or 3 cubs. After gestation period of about 3 months, the cubs remain with their mother for nearly 2 years, learning the essential skill needed to survive in the wild. During this time, the mother teaches them how to hunt, avoid danger, and navigate their environment. The bond between a leopard mother and her cubs is one of the most fascinating aspects of their lives. Here are some interesting facts about the Sri Lankan leopard. It is found only in Sri Lanka and nowhere else in the world. It is considered one of the island's most important wildlife species. The Sri Lankan leopard is capable of climbing trees with remarkable agility. Its spotted coat provides excellent camouflage, helping it blend perfectly into forests and grassland. Many wildlife photographers travel thousands of kilometers to capture a single image of this magnificent animal. Today, the Sri Lankan leopard stands as a symbol of Sri Lanka's rich biodiversity and natural heritage. Protecting this beautiful creature means protecting the forest, wildlife, and ecosystem that make Sri Lanka one of the world's most remarkable destinations for nature tourism. We hope you enjoyed learning about the magnificent Sri Lankan leopard, the true king of Sri Lanka's wilderness. More exciting adventures featuring Sri Lanka's wildlife, culture, history, breathtaking destinations are coming soon. Thank you for watching Camelia Tours Sri Lanka. If you enjoy, you can share, like and subscribe. See you in next adventure soon.